video, right? Standing monoliths, the standing stones for covenant. And so the fact that these are here, these are 18th century, 1700s, the fact that they're here indicates again how important the city is. You kind of put it as the primary city. This basin was not an altar. This is one of the foundations in which you place one of these stones. This is not in its original spot. This is dug up and placed back down. But back over here, there was in fact an altar. Was dismantled to find out was below it, in which demonstrated that it was child sacrifice here. Whether they're the exact same level or not is a question mark. But the idea that you'd make a covenant and practice child sacrifice related to it. Bear with me for a second. We have to get better at understanding the context of the story, because so often we'll put it in our 21st century mindset and Western concept. Child sacrifice was normal. It was normal. Take a look up at Tophet jars, T-O-P-H-E-T-H. I'll show you some pictures of them coming up. Tophet jars. They're all over the place. They're in Egypt, they're in Lebanon, they're in Beirut, they're in Moab, they're in Haifa, they're all over the place. They are jars that you find with the remains of sacrifice, people sacrifice. And they're not just babies. They go from, like about a year old all the way up to 13 years old. I say that for this reason. When Abraham is told to sacrifice Isaac, that's part of the world in which he lived. And the idea that you would appease or satisfy the God that you worship, or some God in the area where you are by that. We have many stories. For example, there's one story, Island Crete, that was under siege. And they were losing. And they decided the reason they were losing is because they were sacrificing the babies of the poor people. So then they had the babies of the rich people that they took and sacrificed. And they figured, well, if we're offering, bad offerings at first, so let's offer some more expensive offerings. And so they do that. But that is normal across. The idea, somewhere in the subconscious of human thought, it's going to take a blood sacrifice to appease a god. It's in there deep. The Aztecs, the Incas, everywhere around the world, China had it. And you think, how is this that everywhere has this? Somewhere in our subconscious, it's going to take a human sacrifice in order to be okay to God, to make him happy. So when Abraham is told to sacrifice Isaac, it's very likely, because remember, through you all the nations will be blessed, through your offspring. It is possible, very possible, that Abraham is saying, this is the one. This is the sacrifice. And so he goes to make the sacrifice, which God stopped. And in that action shows the people of Israel it is not a sacrifice you're going to make, it's a sacrifice I'm going to make. Mm-hmm. And so the stopping of the sacrifice of Isaac puts that throughout all of Israelite story, no human sacrifice. And this is with the first patriarch, right? Abraham. Mm-hmm. So from the get-go, God sets this up this way. One of the abominations of child sacrifice, I'm going to be really Lutheran here. One of the abominations of child sacrifice is that it substitutes a human work for only what God can do. And so while it's awful that you're sacrificing and killing children for this, the bigger problem is that it begins to be what we can offer mm-hmm. instead of what God offers. And so while it's abomination of desolation, sometimes we think, oh, well, and then we try to make the equation of that with abortion, in the United States today. Oh man, the picture biblically is so much bigger than that. It's not about that per se. Although the dignity of human life is in there, but it's seen from another perspective, from human life, the dignity of human life, because God joins himself to humanity and sacrifices himself. Mm-hmm. And so we shouldn't do that direct correlation, because the bigger picture is that it is by God's sacrifice, not human, which was normal everywhere. And by the way, how long a walk is it from Beersheba, where Abraham starts, to Jerusalem, where he goes to offer Isaac? 3 days. And on the third day, he receives his son back from the dead in resurrection. And that's the beginning of the resurrection motif in the Old Testament on the third day. And it happens right with the first patriarch. Because it says, even the great creed out of 1 Corinthians chapter 15, he was raised on the third day according to the scriptures. Right? And you go like, well, where is that exactly in the scriptures? Where does it say that? And the answer is this is a motif that's over and over again, that on the third day you get resurrection. And it starts with the patriarch Abraham, who comes to make the sacrifice. God stops it, and he receives his son back on the third day as from the dead. That's the Hebrew text. You want to comment on that?
Well, I was just thinking the wedding of Cana is on the third day, too.
Yes.
We have all those kinds of connections like that. I mean, that is very patristic in that sense, that this idea. I have to say that. But yeah, and child sacrifice still goes on today, too.
Yes.
Say one of my friends in Uganda, she still walks against child sacrifice and stuff like that.
Talk a little bit about that, because it's so foreign to us because we're in the Western world.
Right, but they have the same idea that if you can have strong enough juju, right, you can triumph over your enemies, whether it's politics or whether it's business or whatever. They use either babies, or they might use albinos, something like that, anything to get kind of that power and authority. Yeah, so that's kind of sacrifice ideas is very ingrained in us, like you said. I think that's right.
Yeah.
Albinos especially are very protected.
Was the norm for child sacrifices like the firstborn, or was it
multiple?
I mean, what was that?
It was multiple. Yeah, it wasn't just firstborn.
So you could give up multiple children.
You could.
It's interesting how you say they decided the poor weren't good enough to go for a wealth person. So there's obviously the downcast decided to just grab somebody's. I mean, that's what they were doing, right? Just grabbing anybody else's.
Right.
You say we're not familiar with child sacrifice. I'm just curious why, or if there's an appropriate way to talk about how we sacrifice babies to our own God of comfort in abortion. Is that really different?
There's overlap. There's overlap.
Well, I think we can find parallels. I don't think you have to say one against the other. It's just this adds an extra layer to it that we often don't think about. And I think and the whole idea of the first commandment being love the Lord your God, right? And everything else goes from that. So this is another example of that. In graphic detail.
Over and over through the Old Testament, the issue is it the right God, and do we trust him? They do horrendous things throughout the Old Testament. And you go like that, they're just all messed up. Yep, but they have the right God, and they trust him. I mean, King David. They're always in the Sunday school chart, King Saul, thumbs down, King David, thumbs up, King Solomon, we're not sure. You know? And you go when you get to it, you go like, well, I want to be like King David on his good days.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Which part of that?
But he always had the right God. That's the difference between David and the other two. He always had the right God. Saul ends up at a witch at Endor, not knowing which God to look to. Solomon is sacrificing to Moloch and Milcom, but David always knows who God is. He always knows it's Yahweh.
Is that true, like with Moloch, that it was a hollow god where they would heat it up too?
Yes.
And he had his arms like this?
Yes.
Yeah, and they would put the babies in the arms of the god.
Metal arms?
Yeah, they would heat up. Yeah.
Oh, live? They did bring up alive?
Yeah. The baby had to be live because it was sacrificed.
I thought they were destroyed.
I think there were different methods depending on where they were. But here's 18th century monoliths, importance of Gezer, also the relation of child sacrifice to the culture in which that happens. Come on. All right. We're going to head back up the trail, backing over and head back to